Europe wasn't always a few big countries. In reality, a couple hundred years ago, it was a patchwork, a chaotic quilt of tiny kingdoms, duchies, counties, and city-states. From the forest of Saxony to the valleys of Italy, the continent looked like shattered glass. Hundreds of borders, each ruled by someone who had clawed their way to the top. In the Middle Ages, it wasn't unusual to travel a few miles and find yourself in another country. Every castle, every hilltop fortress, every walled town, its own lord, its own laws, and its own armies. So how did one person come to rule one of these little worlds? How did someone go from just another knight, merchant, or even soldier to wearing a crown, or at least calling themselves a lord of somewhere? To understand that, we have to start with the chaos left behind after the fall of the Roman Empire. When Rome collapsed, it left a massive power vacuum in Europe. Suddenly, there was no emperor, no central government, no single army keeping order in the land. Local strongmen, tribal leaders, and bishops began taking control of the regions they lived in. Over time, those regions hardened into micro-kingdoms, what we now call feudal states. Kings granted land to their nobles in exchange for loyalty and military support. Those nobles then divided that land up even further amongst their knights and vassals. And before long, Europe was divided into thousands of tiny pieces, each with its own ruler. But here's the thing. In a world that fragmented, almost anyone ambitious could rise to power. There were a few main paths to power. The first was the path of force, the warlord's road. If you had enough men and enough muscle, you could take a fortress and make it your own. Many early medieval rulers did exactly that. Take the Normans, for example, ruthless adventurers from northern France. Men like Robert Guiscard sailed to southern Italy, conquered it piece by piece, and crowned themselves dukes of that land. In a time when strength ruled, the sword could make anyone a king, faster than any kind of royal decree or something like that. The second path we saw a lot of was through family, obviously, the noble path. If you couldn't win by war, you could win by marriage. Europe's royal families treated marriage like a strategic game of chess. You didn't need to conquer your neighbor if you could just marry their daughter and inherit their lands. The Habsburgs, for example, were masters of this. They started as a minor noble house in modern-day Switzerland, but through careful marriages, they gained territory across all of Europe. There's even an old saying, let others wage war, you lucky Austria, marry. It worked. Within a few generations, the Habsburgs ruled almost half of Europe. And the third path was through loyalty and royal favor. If you served your king well, fought for him, advised him, or helped him collect taxes, you could be rewarded with land and titles. That's how William the Conqueror's followers became earls and barons across all of England. He rewarded those who helped him take power. In medieval Europe, the surest way to become a lord was to help your own lord become king. And finally, there was the path of the church, the clerical route to power. The church wasn't just a spiritual force in Europe, it was a political empire. Bishops and abbots controlled massive lands and even armies of their own. For example, the Holy Roman Empire, there were entire territories ruled by prince bishops, men who were both religious leaders and secular lords. For some, the road to power didn't come through the sword or through crown or through marriage, but through the cross. But ruling one of these small states was never easy, obviously. Power was so fragile, alliances broke, heirs died, peasants revolted, and ambitious neighbors were always waiting for an excuse to invade. A single bad harvest, a failed marriage alliance, or one betrayal could undo everything that someone built. The same ladder that helped you climb to power could be kicked out from under you at any given time. And that's what made medieval Europe so fascinating. It wasn't shaped by these giant empires or modern borders, but by countless individuals. Think of knights, warlords, nobles, and priests, all chasing power. One castle, one valley, one marriage at a time. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did and you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. Leave a comment on if you think you could rise to power in medieval Europe. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you next time.